There we go. We are live.
Well, let's see if it shows up. I wasn't getting the fetch of the video, so.
Technology is great. You'd think you do a couple hundred shows, it would act consistently, but it does not.
Not really.
Well, just to let you know, yesterday when I was sharing a live show, it would on my cell phone. It wouldn't even play it. It just did like a screenshot. I couldn't watch what the consumers were seeing, so something wasn't yet working correctly yesterday.
We're supposed to have a cigar.
It's only a $7 billion company or whatever.
That looks like we're there, so it's good. It just wasn't doing the preview, so.
All right.
Let's see if we're in good shape here.
Giddy up.
All right, here we go.
All 3 time zones covered because they're in Florida, so they're Pacific.
Well, it's real late in Florida.
It is.
All right, it should be live now, Jeff, if you want to share it out.
Yep.
All right, you guys all ready? Well, I will kick it off.
Sounds good.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Developing Palates and Pour and Tell. I am Aaron Loomis, coming to you from the Drew Estate Company studio. With me today is the whole Developing Palates team: June Liu, Seth Geist, John McTavish. How you gentlemen doing this evening?
Rocking.
We got FSGs and barrel strength rye. I don't think that's a recipe for a bad time. So if it's not good now, it'll certainly be good in about 15 minutes.
Especially at the beach.
Yeah, I'm actually dialing in from the beach. If you look behind me, you'll see the ocean.
We have a fantastic pairing show. We have Templeton Rye and Florida Sungrown. It's a fantastic pairing. So what I'll do is I'll introduce the guests today. We have Keith Kerkhoff and Tim Grimes from Templeton Rye. How are you guys doing, Keith and Tim?
Great.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And our honorary Developing Palates member, Jeff Borysiewicz from Corona Cigar Company and Florida Sungrown. How you doing, Jeff?
Hey, guys. I'm just getting ready to share this stuff out. So, but I'm glad to be a part of the show and looking forward to drinking some great rye whiskey and some great FSG cigars pairing with it.
Absolutely. All right. So Keith and Tim, what we like to typically do is we like to start off with kind of a brief history or summary of the company. So I'm not sure which one of you guys would like to take that on, because I know there's a lot of family history here. So if you guys want to kind of just give us a bit of a background on Templeton Rye.
Well, yes, I'll just handle that. I guess with myself, just so people out there understand, Templeton Rye is actually in the community of Templeton, Iowa. Mm-hmm. And it's a very small community. I think at the tops they had probably 400 people living in town. Right now there's around 350 residents of the community. And real small town. They're very meticulous people. I always tell you won't find a dandelion in anybody's yard. And it's a very neat and well-kept community. And back during Prohibition, they had a recipe that they called Templeton Rye. And a lot of you people are aware of Prohibition started in 1920 and it was over in 1933. It was repealed in 1933. But during that time, this community created a high caliber spirit, which they called Templeton Rye. And it wasn't, my grandfather was one of them that was one of the unique entrepreneurs at that time. But you got to remember, this community of 350 people, practically everybody in town had some association with Templeton Rye. And for the people that don't know, everything was underground, which means it was illegal. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they still talk about it today. You got into that bootleg whiskey. Well, you got to know somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. And then you got to hope that they will share it with you. But we brought it as a legal brand in 2006. Scott Bush had the idea to bring in a legal brand. How I got involved with it, my family contributed the recipe. It's based off the Kerkhoff recipe. And then another gentleman had the trademark. And we got together, and I tell you what, we had a really unbelievable amount of success just because we didn't have enough product. You know, right. It was very short, and people were crawling over top of each other trying to get it. But you have to remember, we if you start the day with Jim's whiskey, you wouldn't have near the success we had, simply because we had the history behind us, and we had a product that was actually sold during Prohibition in New York City, Chicago, and San Francisco. And you think about the logistics back then compared to today, that's quite a outstanding achievement.
Absolutely. So how did was it your great grandfather that?
My grandfather, Alphonse.
Your grandfather. Okay. How did he kind of get into that type of a thing? Like, is that just something that?
How I got into it and how I got involved with it was when I was a younger lad. I was about an 8th grader, so I always heard rumors that my grandfather made Templeton Rye whiskey, and I asked my dad one day. I said, "You got to understand, I was awful young." I said, "Dad, didn't Grandpa make Templeton Rye?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I says, "Isn't that an art that should be shared and carried down?" And my dad told me at that time, he said, "Son, you don't need to concern yourself with that." And so then 5 years later, I was in college. And anyway, I was home for the summer. And my dad woke me up and he said, along with my brother, and he said, "We're going to do something today, and you two better not say one word about what we're doing." I thought, what the hell? What are we going to do, you know? And then he revealed us. He says, "Grandpa's coming over. We're going to go set some mash, and he's going to show us the art where you guys are sworn to secrecy." And he said, "In a week, we're going to distill that product." So that's exactly how it went, as my experience into it. But I was sworn to secrecy. The cute story about this cute part about this whole story is we didn't start Templeton Rye until 2006. And my alma mater, Buena Vista College in Storm Lake, Iowa, you know, they wanted to do a story on me because they just thought this was kind of a unique company. And at that time, I revealed in our quarterly flyer that I had the opportunity to make whiskey with my grandfather when I was in college. And then my buddies all texted me and they said, "Why in the hell didn't you bring some of that up to college when we were here?" You know? And,
yeah.
And my response was, I said, number one, I was sworn to secrecy. I couldn't. And secondly, we got enough trouble without.
There you go. All right.
That's how I got involved with it. And then when it came time to actually bring the company as a legal brand, my dad worked with the gentleman to get the company going. And about 6 months later, my dad said, "Hey, at my age, I don't care to be involved in an enterprise like this." He says, "Keith, you're probably the one in the family that could afford to get into it. Are you interested?" And I was always inquisitive about Templeton Rye. I said, "Hell yes." So it was a very interesting, you know, people want to talk about whiskey. They don't want to talk about cotton candy, you know, and it always draws a lot of attention when you wear a shirt with whiskey on it.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Jeff, so how did you get involved with Templeton Rye?
Well, it's interesting that you guys have Templeton Rye has a great salesperson down in Florida with David Anthony there. And he came from, let me just tell you something about David, is that he was our sales guy for Zazarak and Pappy Van Winkle back when people didn't know what Pappy Van Winkle was. And so when 2008, when we were selling all kinds of bourbon before people really knew, you know, the big bourbon boom, what was going on. And I remember we could get it when he showed me the bottle of Pappy Van Winkle. I said, "Man, they'll sell in our store because the guy's smoking a cigar." Little did I know it would become what it became. But David has been a real big, you know, he's well respected. And here in Florida, you guys just have a really great program. We've done a lot of events like at our Barn Smoker program and at our cigar stores and cigar bars where Templeton brings out what they call flapper girls, and they're dressed up like the Roaring 20s. Gets that whole you know, Prohibition era Chicago feel to it, and so it's kind of exciting what they do. And then the rye whiskey, I think it's interesting. You guys got into the rye before a lot of people kind of knew what rye was. People dipped their toe in the bourbon first and kind of tested a little bit with the rye, and that market wasn't as crowded at the time either. So Templeton's been well received amongst the customers and people that like rye. I find it to be a very approachable rye. not something that, some of the ryes are a little spicy and a little hot. These are, in my opinion, just a little spicy sweet, and that's the way I would take it. But it's been a great company, and we've been doing a lot of cigar pairings with them. So I figured, I don't know if you guys know, you're in Ohio right now, but in Florida, a lot of the bars are closed. So we're not allowed to be doing these things anymore right now, these Templeton pairings in person. So that's why we want to keep sharing this stuff with guys where we can pair up cigars and great whiskey.
Absolutely.
We're glad you partnered with us. We really appreciate it, Jeff, a lot.
It's easier when it's good product. I'll just tell you that.
Right on.
So Keith and Tim, do you want to kind of take us through the various expressions that are kind of out there to market currently?
Absolutely. So I've got 3 core whiskeys, and actually they're right behind me and they're over my shoulder. But we have our Templeton 4-year, which is our core product. It's what you'd see behind about every bar and restaurant you're in. It's our intro brand. It's the intro to our brand. It's the easiest drinking, smooth, light, simple, and it's the least expensive. But it's built for cocktailing. It's built to mix. So if you're making old fashions, I don't care what it is with rye, you want to use that 4-year, and that's what it's built for. However, our Templeton 6-year is quickly becoming one of our best sellers. And I think at some point it may take over 4-year. From its price point, it's about $10 off of the 4-year, and it is incredibly good. And Keith, you can speak to this, but I think it's closer to original recipe than even 4-year is in terms of flavor profile. Because to Jeff's point, it goes in that really smooth, really rich, but it has those sweeter notes that bourbon drinkers like, and it draws them into that rye category. We do that with that 6-year. And it's worked really well for us. And then we have what we're all tasting today is our barrel strength. So hopefully everybody's got a glass of that going. And we're drinking our 2019 barrel strength right now. And 2019 is our second release. So 2018 was our inaugural release, 90 points, Whiskey Advocate, got great reviews. We followed it right up with our 2019. And I think it's even better, spicier, richer. Packs a punch, but to Jeff's point again, super smooth. And a matter of fact, Aaron and John, I think we were talking about this earlier, but it is it's high in alcohol, but incredibly smooth. And it's scary in that regard.
And of course, speaking about rye, it's funny because of course I'm up in Canada, and rye is a spirit that is very well accepted up in Canada. In fact, I'd say far more than bourbon has been. Looking at my bottle, I actually had to double check because I wasn't sure whether I had. It looks like I've actually got the 2018, so I don't know if that's a little
is that
throwback
your only
there.
bottle of that?
For now, yeah.
Okay. If you can capture another one, do it.
I mean, we were joking today because I was trying to. We were looking at where Templeton was available. I'm fortunate enough to be in Alberta, which is one of the most accessible places for liquor distributorship in Canada, and there's roughly about 1,300 liquor stores for all of Alberta, for about 4.3 million people. And then if you look at Ontario, which is about 14.4 million people, they have about 1,600 liquor stores. So I think we probably hold our own when it comes to the rye.
Interesting fact to that is two Canadian points to make. One, our head distiller is Canadian, so nod to you, John, with that one. And another point that's really important is at Templeton, we are all about quality. We're so quality driven. A lot of people wonder, where do we get our rye from? Well, our rye comes from Canada. It's some of the best, Canada and Germany. So I can't say it's all Canadian. It's mostly a lot of from Germany too. But the Canadian rye rivals that German rye in terms of those just the 2 best sources. And we do source our rye from those places. So
John forgot to tell everybody the reason they drink so much rye is because in the wintertime it's freaking cold.
It's freaking cold.
Dark outside, that's right. And they need something to warm them up and keep them alive.
That is check on all boxes, Jeff. And we're not snobby up here. I mean, I'm drinking a Glencairn, and it's the barrel strength is fantastic in a Glencairn, but we're more than happy to do any kind of cocktail as well. In fact, I kind of considered doing up a old fashioned with the rye. but it's just too much work. It's so much easier to just pour it in a Glencairn and have it. But I'll definitely be trying it out as an old fashioned and see how that. I'm sure that's going to be spectacular.
Let's use our 6-year for that, please. It makes the best darn old fashioned ever.
You know, a note, guys, Tim talked about the 6-year, but the reason we went to that higher proof rye 6-year was simply because we were being asked for it, and we didn't have enough product. We were just holding our own with keeping the 4-year supplied, and then we kept some barrels back an extra 2 years, and it was well received because we were getting a lot of bartenders and the people in that business that wanted us to have a higher proof rye to actually go into classic cocktails and so forth that they were pushing on their menus.
So Keith and Tim, I notice on sort of the list here, Jim Murray had you guys listed in 2009 as Rye Whiskey of the Year. You know, in the cigar industry, we kind of talk about cigar aficionado as if you get on the list, it tends to have a pretty big impact on your business. I know that whiskeys that have been on Jim Murray's Bible tend to all of a sudden kind of spike and become hard to get. So did that make a pretty substantial impact on the business?
Well, yes, it did. And you know, you always want to take those accolades if you can. And, you know, once again, it was just, we had to, I don't know, we had to ramp up production. And we're one of the larger companies one of the smaller companies have a lot of rye reserve. And yes, it did spike up at that time.
Yeah, as a result of that, I mean, we have the largest rye reserve we have one of the largest rye reserves in the country, I should say, which says a lot. I mean, obviously we're a rye company, it's our thing, but it was because of that success that we had to acquire more rye.
Probably would have been ideal if he gave you a 10-month heads up or something like that so you could prepare for it, but it doesn't quite work like that.
4 years, it would have been nice to have a 4-year advance.
Well, yeah, fair enough.
You know, guys, we always had people come through on tours and they told me how to do it. They said, Keith, you need to kick up your still. You got to produce more. And I said, no, you don't understand. We had to do that 4 years ago. We can't go back in time.
Right.
And I said, in 4 years, we'll have more. But you have to explain it. When the government says it's got to be in the barrel 4 years, 6 years, it is all of that. And it's not a day short. And people kind of get that then.
So Keith, if people want to visit you, where do they go? They Templeton, Ohio there?
Well, you come out here to Iowa. We're West Central Iowa. From Des Moines, we're about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes to the northwest. And we give tours Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And the tours we have 4 tours a day. They're on the 9, 11, 1, and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And they get about an hour and 15, 20-minute tour. And then they do the tasting and stuff. And then they have an opportunity to come into our apparel room and buy some apparel if they would like. And we want to treat them all like gold because we appreciate everybody's interest. And we're out here, you know, a little town of 300 population, but we welcome everybody out here.
You said 300 people.
350.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
So you're in the middle of nowhere of Iowa with 300 people. That's man. I bet pheasant hunting's pretty doggone good around there.
You better believe it.
You know, they always say about a small community, everybody knows your business, but I'll guarantee you, if you have a hardship, they're all there to help too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean everybody's there for one another.
It's amazing. Some of the funeral. I mean, I come from a community of 1,500, which is a very small community also compared to where you guys come from. But you know, our funerals are huge, not now because of the COVID, but it's amazing how many people show up for funerals and weddings and everything else for celebrations.
Oh yeah.
So if you're if you're traveling across Iowa, what interstate are you near? I mean, so you give us a little.
Okay, you go from Des Moines, you go about I'd say 60 or 70 miles to the west, and you'll hit it's on Interstate 80, and then from Interstate 80, Atlantic exit, we're 40 miles north.
Huh.
So that
Isn't
Interstate
there a
80
place-
crosses the country, the middle of the country. So we're right in the middle of the state.
Isn't that where that wall drug is on Interstate 80?
Wall drug? Is that what you
Yeah.
said?
Yeah, it is. what
That's
I
in
said.
South Dakota, I think.
It's on the same interstate, right?
We're not quite that remote.
All right. How about the Corn Palace? Are you near that?
Oh, Mitchell? No, there's other entertainment in Mitchell other than the Corn Palace, but I can't speak to that.
Okay. All right.
How far
Right.
north of you? How far north of you are from like Kansas City?
3 hours.
They're
Four. I'd say four.
Yeah.
4 hours.
Like 4 hours. Okay.
they're right above Missouri. Like they border Missouri, right?
Thank
Yeah,
you, June,
can,
for
you
giving
can
us
take
the
our small
geographical-
highway. I think it's
No,
Highway 72.
I'm actually from Missouri. So
It's Missouri, man. It's Missouri.
no, believe it or
You can
not.
do a straight shot down from the Templeton, from the distillery down the highway, and you can hit KC. So it's kind of cool.
Oh, nice. Okay.
All right. So what? Iowa, the home of John Deere and home of Templeton. I believe it or not, I didn't know that until just now. So
It's
anyway.
listen, it's middle America rye for real Americans.
I love it.
Guys, I just want to share this with you. You know, I was always, like I said, very inquisitive about what was going on with Templeton Rye. And when I talked to my grandfather, you know, we always shared stories and we always visited when we were together about Templeton Rye. And, you know, he told me several stories, you know, and it's remarkable how those guys went to the extent to hide this product so they wouldn't get caught by the revenuers. And the revenuers, you know, were the policemen of the world for the whiskey industry or for the government actually. And they had I don't know, got tipped off or something, but I got to back up a little bit here, guys. The sheriff in Carroll County was on the side of the bootleggers. He would wear a hat. If he didn't wear a hat, that was a signal that, hey, they're close. They're in the area. Clean up your operation or get it shut down. And Audubon County, which is only 3 miles to the south of Templeton, there were a lot of Protestant people in that. And the sheriff down there, he wanted to get the bootleggers. So, you know, it was kind of a contrast there. You had to stay out of Audubon County and you wanted to work in Carroll County. And, but the story I wanted to tell you is my grandfather, he was making had his whiskey jugs filled up and he was ready it was some for sale. But where does he go with it? So he went in, and a lot of you probably don't know what ear corn is, but you harvest the ear and you put it in a crib, and then it's got vents in it so that the corn will dry. Well, my grandfather, he took his jugs and stuck them in that corn to hide them. And lo and behold, the feds found out that he had some whiskey in there. And they started sticking rods through that corn, those vents in the corn crib. And they actually poked long enough, they broke one of those jugs, and it was like a gallon jug. And it trickled down and it got off the wooden sill of the structure there. And they got 2 ounces of dirty whiskey. And that 2 ounces, my grandfather said, sent him to Fort Dodge to federal court, because that was where they had federal court back during Prohibition.
Wow.
And, you know, and to this day, a lot of people don't understand. You guys probably all know this, but people on tours will always say, Keith, how much whiskey can I have in my possession? I said, you can have 50 gallons of beer for your private use. You can't sell it. You can have 50 gallons of wine, but you're not allowed 1 ounce of spirits in this country.
Yeah.
Overseas, you can have some spirits, but in the United States, you're not allowed. It's illegal to have any illegal spirit. And a lot of people don't realize that.
Huh.
You know what's interesting here, guys? When we had the folks from Scotland on, the Grant family, and when you hear from the folks in Kentucky and now in Iowa, the same stories being repeated about how they were all hiding from the regulators and the taxmen, and that's why they're all in such remote areas. So it makes perfect sense that, if you're trying to, I imagine most of the whiskey you guys made went back towards Chicago and stuff, but they didn't want to know where it was being made, and so you guys were pretty hidden.
Well, years ago, it was a way of life to survive, because my dad was born in 1929, the year of the Depression. These people needed money, and Templeton was one of the better had one of the solvent banks in the area because people were making money with whiskey. And I don't like to use this comparable, but it really is something. It was shameful to get caught making whiskey back during Prohibition because you were thought of, people looked down on you. And it's kind of like a drug dealer today. You know, it is illegal to have drugs. And when you do, people kind of look down their nose at people that are known to be meth addicts but the comparison is not, I mean, as far as what harm that it does to your body is, I mean, the whiskey was here before Prohibition, then they took it away. We never did have ever legalized meth or any of that hard drugs. But now what we're finding out, everybody that's, you know, hey, I know somebody from Templeton. Well, my grandfather, they're all proud to be from this area because of the success that we had with our whiskey. And years ago, it was shameful to be associated with it. One other thing I just want to tell you quickly while I think of it, you know, my dad and I worked on getting the history, getting some of the stories from some of the older people in this community. And you'd be surprised. I worked with a lot of people in this community because I'm an auctioneer and I also sold a lot of hogs over here. And, you know, my dad and I, we'd meet up with these people and say, hey, we'd like to come over and see you. Yeah, come on over. And then we get to the door and, hey, we'd like to, what do you want to talk to me about? Well, we want to talk to you about Templeton Rye. Oh, I don't know anything about it. You'll have to find somebody else. You know? And we knew damn well they knew something about it. But eventually we got the confidence of a couple older senior ladies that told their story. And then everybody kind of, well, yeah, maybe we should share these stories. And it was amazing, the people that wouldn't mention that family's name. Well, we don't want to mention their name, you know, like they're going to exhume them and bring them back to justice, you know.
Right.
But we finally got that over the hump now. And the other thing, the community has been very supportive of us with this museum that we have. We have a lot of artifacts in here that are very interesting that people in the community stepped forward and they gave it to us on loan. And when we have the tours and stuff, our tour people tell that story.
Awesome. So, hey, can we get you to auction off Aaron real quick?
Yeah.
You got any buyers? I can auction here, you know, but I got a feeling I'm going
always
to
a
end up
market.
taking this one home.
So we can sell
let's hear your chant, and the four of us will bid on Aaron.
Well, I'll tell you what. Why don't we sell a bottle of? We'll sell a bottle of 6 year.
There you go.
You guys send
That
us a
works
check,
too.
okay?
It's probably more expensive.
You'll
than Aaron,
you'll get
right?
more out of the bottle than you
We're gonna
get
get
from
more
me.
out of that than Aaron.
Hey, I don't hear you. I'm bid 10, 15. I'm at 10 and 15 and 15 and now 20. 15 and now $20, 29, 20, 15 and 20. $15 now 20. Guys, you know this thing will sell for $40 in the store.
Yeah.
It's a bargain. 20, 25. Give me 20, 25. Somebody 25, 25. Well, I sold it out to you cheap guys for $20.
There you go.
Nice
Deal.
Well, that's
You
good
can
to
hire
know.
Keith for all your online sales now.
That's
That's
right.
what I'm thinking. Next time, if Keith's on the road doing like a Templeton event, man, we'll have an auction. We'll sell some stuff
Auction.
and
Oh,
raise some
yeah.
money for a charity or something.
Well, you got to remember, my grandfather was outside the law. I'm inside the law. As long as it's legal, we'll do it, okay?
All right.
I don't know how to work in like California and Canada, but you could trick us North Carolinians with that. We won't even know what we're doing. We'll just start raising our hands.
Well, I was gonna say you
Somebody said
probably
something
want to
about
give them a little.
Missouri.
Yeah, I was gonna say you probably want to give them a little taste first of the barrel strength, and then you start the auction, and then you'll just
There you go.
relax
You guys
everybody a
know the
little
game.
bit.
Yeah, when you're going to have a benefit auction, you got to have the bar open for about 2.5 hours before
That's
you
right.
start the auction. And people go,
That's
"God, what did
true.
I spend last night?"
So
what-
Keith, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, so you're in Iowa, you're in corn country. You got corn all over. You're making rye whiskey. Obviously, you have some corn in the mash. Now, no corn.
Yeah, talked about the bird. We're not in our rye, but we also have laid down 3,000 barrels of bourbon.
Okay, because I was about to say
Tim's the expert on them.
you probably
that's
have
your-
you probably have people all over Templeton who are growing corn, who want you to use their corn. So do you have like a
No.
line outside?
Why they didn't years ago, I don't know that answer. But evidently somebody liked the spicy taste of rye grain, and that's what they brought through on the flavor. But You're right. And I actually, in fact, the bourbon barrels that we have laid down right now, that corn came off on my farm.
Oh,
They bought the
That's
majority of
awesome.
that.
That's
Is
awesome.
is that a part of your old distillate that you guys are going to release down the road?
Yes. So
Yeah.
we've got Iowa distillate coming, rye coming soon. But the bourbon will be a little longer. We started bourbon last year.
Oh,
And,
okay. Got it.
we have 2 different bourbon mash bills. There'll be a really limited release at some point. And then with the high rye, but it's still our bourbon mash. And then we'll come out with our regular bourbon. But it's about 3 years out.
Okay. And
Pretty
is
exciting.
your
Yeah, but we can't call it a state, but it is all Keith's corn. And I thought that was really cool.
that is cool.
Hey,
Nothing
why
but the
can't you
best,
call it
guys.
Why can't you call it a state?
I think you have to, it's a lot like wine. So you really have to come from a single plot. We would have to figure out the legalities of how you label estate bottled whiskey. And that is not a very defined thing right now. And I don't want to let any cats out of the bag, but that would be a really cool thing to do and definitely on our minds.
Absolutely.
are there any estate?
But we have to,
bottled
it's a good question though, Jeff, and we have to figure out the legalities of it. It would also be significantly more expensive, just like when you buy an estate bottle of wine. Same thing with whiskey.
Oh, just give yourself the title. Who cares about paying all that stuff?
I'm with
No one else
Seth.
has done it.
Honestly, Seth, I think, is 100% right, unless the TTB or whatever the alcohol label people say you can't do it. But I don't see why not. I mean, it is, if you're growing the corn and you're using it in your whiskey, you're being truthful. So I'm with Seth. Call it,
Well,
because that's
yeah.
part of the story.
Mhm.
No, it is. That's cool. And actually, to answer your question even more directly, Jeff, with this particular batch, we still have rye in it, and Keith would have had to have grown rye, corn, and bar. You have to have all of those 3
Fully
ingredients in there
estate,
on Martin.
yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be one. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Just say you did it.
You know, the liquor companies,
No one's gonna figure it out.
the liquor man, you know, we might be 70 years removed from the prohibition, but the liquor man is not relaxed one iota in 70 years.
Listen, I'll fly out there and be like, man, those are some beautiful fields of rye right there. That's what we'll
Yeah.
just say right there. We'll just trick them all.
And then they'll be like, Seth, that's corn.
I'll be like, I know the difference between
I
corn
want
and
to
rye.
bring this up. You know, Iowa is humid in the summer, and that's not conducive for raising good rye. Rye is used out here for a cover crop to prevent erosion in a lot of the fields and so forth. And there's still a big market for cereal rye in Iowa, but like I just said, it's for erosion control and so forth. And the cooler climate states or provinces like Canada, and you get over in Europe, you know, they got that cool climate, and that produces the best rye. And we actually have some people here that want to raise rye for us, but we're very staunch on quality control, and they might be disappointed.
We just tried, some farmers just brought some in. We tried 3 different batches of rye, and they were good, but when you put it up to the rye we've been purchasing, it just didn't stand up.
Yeah, sugar content probably isn't high enough. My understanding is the cold weather cereal crops, the sugar content tends to be higher to allow the grain to survive that frost. So, you know, it's a blessing and a curse because, you know, you're fighting the elements to grow the crop, but for any kind of distillation, like you said, it ends up being just that, you know, that little extra oomph to the final product, which is what you're looking for.
And when you think of rye, the grain itself, there's so little to work with there. You need that sugar content in it. It's a really good point, John.
Yeah.
I'm still
Well,
shaking. Canadian
rye
Canadian rye better than American rye. This is bullshit, man.
I know.
Hey, I agree,
This is
Seth.
shit.
Trust
I
me,
mean, it's
agree.
like,
I
you
think
know,
maple
they have-
syrup here is pretty
Listen,
fucking good
maple
too.
syrup in Vermont and New Hampshire tops Canadian maple syrup any day of the damn week.
Well, the problem with, I mean, just to slag Canadian rye a little bit, the problem with Canadian rye is that most Canadian rye is sort of blended or built around mixing. It's never really been a product that's been produced as a primary spirit. You don't typically see people pouring a Canadian whiskey in a glass and then throwing an ice cube and drinking it. It's usually a mixed drink. So, you know, while we've got a long history of making a rye mash distillate, there's only recently has there really been any distilleries up here that have been really making a high rye mash bill, intended to be that. This is really kind of a new product. I mean, kind of like Scotch was 100 years ago. I think this craze of bourbon and rye is really a new thing within the last decade that people are starting to recognize and appreciate the finer spirits and the higher quality spirits, whereas before it was just something to mix with your Coke.
When you've got a product like ours, which is 95% rye, the rye needs to really be good.
Yeah.
There's no room for error there.
Yeah.
So this 6 year is 95% rye on the mash bill.
Correct.
5% more.
Wow.
Yep.
So we did a special leading up to this whole event where you got a bottle of the barrel strength rye with Florida sun-grown cigars. Now that barrel strength rye, what's the age? Is there an age statement on that, or?
There's not. It's a great question. So that product is designed to be different every release. So and let me tell you, I guess, so Jeff, I'll explain how we make that. So what we do is we pull out barrels that we feel are exceptional, and we don't go off of ages. I mean, it'll always be 4 year or greater. Now it happens to be, and I'll give you some secret information. The 2019 is a little over, it's about 4.5 year to bordering up to 5 year rye. So if you want to know what our 4 year tastes like when you haven't chill filtered it and you haven't watered it down, which is what our 4 year is, this is what it tastes like. It's kind of an amazing thing to try those side by side to see what it tastes like right out of the barrel. Now, our 2020, which is just releasing now, has 3 different ages in it. And it's got 5 years, 6 years, 7 year in it. And it's a whole different flavor profile. We want that to be different every time you try it. And it's limited. So you get it. Just like John's got the 2018. You can't find 2018 around here anymore. It's really hard to find if you can find it at all. And the 2019, we've been out of it. So I'm glad you guys have a little bit. It's really cool that you had that.
Well, let me tell you what we did is we got an X amount of number of cases. It wasn't a lot. So we made these samplers and they sold real fast. We were able to get a few more cases to do some more samplers available tonight.
Sure.
But what I'd like to do is I've got the maple cask finish, and I didn't want to confuse people by offering 2 samplers where one had the barrel strength and one had the maple cask. So what I think I'm going to do is, because this was so popular and it was reasonably priced too, what we did with the cigars and the whiskey, I think maybe next week I'll do another sampler, and let's talk about the maple cask, because I'm enjoying it. I'm drinking it now.
Yes.
And one of the things I'll tell you, when it was presented to me at first, when I saw it, I thought it was a maple flavored rye. And when I heard that, I said, no, I don't want it. And then your guy, David, said, Jeff, let me tell you, you're misreading this. This isn't maple flavored. It's maple finished and maple wood cask. So why don't you educate us and explain to us about the maple cask finish? And then maybe next week we'll go ahead and offer this with an FSG sampler as well. So tell us about that.
Absolutely. And first of all, and going back to what you said about David, we're so fortunate to have him. I'm glad he explained that to you in that way, because you're exactly right. And Keith was saying when we first released this, because it's the first in a series of finishes. So we've got 3 finishes planned, and that was the intro item. And we were concerned that people would feel that way, Jeff, that you'd look at maple and go, oh, this is going to be like Crown Maple, which is just a sugar bomb. Right.
Right.
And it's quite frankly, it's gross. I mean, that's not my thing. It is for some people. We make classic, high-end, high-quality whiskey, and we wanted this to be a finish, not a flavoring agent. So what we did is we sourced really good maple from a family in Vermont, put it in our barrels, dumped them, put the maple syrup in the barrel, let it soak in the staves. We kicked those barrels around for about 2 months. So it soaked into the staves, and then dumped the maple out. And that's important, because if we left the maple in, it would have sweetened it up. We could have done that, but we didn't want to do that. We dumped it out, put our whiskey back in for 2 months. So that contact wasn't that long, and that was intentional. It's so that you get these nuanced flavors of
hint.
maple. Right.
A hint of maple.
So I like to talk about in wine terms. If you drink red wine, and one of the red grapes that's really popular is Pinot Noir. Pinot Noir is not a heavy red grape like Cabernet or Zinfandel, but it's still in that red grape family. This maple is not, as you're tasting it right now, Jeff, it's not heavy. It's not like the barrel strength. It doesn't boil you over. It's delicate, it's light, but it has these new, beautiful, nuanced flavors. And actually, the more you drink it, the more you get some of those maple notes out and chocolate. It's a really pretty whiskey. Talk about a good cigar pairing. I think it's a great whiskey to have with a cigar.
You are 100% right, because I'm pairing it with this FSG, and this is spicy, sweet, but not sugary, if that makes sense. If you have sweetness, but without, again, when I had the Crown Maple, and then that's what was in my mind, I was like, man, that's not going to pair with, that's not what when I say we, fine whiskey guys and cigar guys, that's not what they're after, and so, but this is really nice, and we're going to go ahead and do it because it pairs perfect.
And so, we're out at the distillery and it's hard to find. And I know that David has a little bit set aside. So I'm glad that you're going to take advantage of that because it'll be a one and done for you. And it could be for us too. So, and then the next one, if I can tease it, we have a Caribbean rum cask finished this week. So that'll be, that's what kind of takes the place of that maple. So please grab that maple because you're going to be one of the only people that has it at this point. So that'll be fun to have and offer to your people. And then just look for that Caribbean rum finish because that is even better. It's just mind blowing. I can't wait for you to try it. So it's our next in the lineup.
So that's going to be kind of an annual thing then, Tim. Like you're going to do the sort of 2020 release and then 2021. Yeah. Is that the idea?
Exactly. We want to do one a year is the idea. Very limited. I think we're going to have about 2,000 cases of any of those, and that's 6-pack cases, not 12 packs. So they're very limited items.
Well, echoing
that's this year.
Yeah, Caribbean Rum Cask comes out this week, so it might take a few weeks, 3 or 4 weeks to get to Florida. Well, depending, you guys are from all over the place.
It's going to take me a couple hours to fly to Templeton, man. That's no one's flying, man. There's going to be a lot of room for me. And
I was going to say because we haven't really talked about our tasting experience. So I am currently drinking like I said, the 2018 barrel strength. And in the green room before the show started, I mentioned, and you certainly have echoed this sentiment, that one of the things I think that's really nice about it is, first of all, you can have a high proof spirit that tastes like a high proof spirit. That is, it sort of crushes the palate very quickly. This does not taste like a high proof spirit. I mean that in a very a positive way, where you take a sip and you're like, well, this isn't really blowing my palate up. I'm getting a huge flavor explosion, but I don't feel like my palate is being overwhelmed by the alcohol content. And then the spices that are in there are very well balanced. And talking about sort of the pairing with the FSG, it's interesting because from the moment I lit up the FSG, I've been getting nothing but citrus and powdered cocoa from the FSG. So I get like just this lovely spice off the rye, and then the FSG gives me this sort of chocolatey finish. So it's almost kind of like a Christmas cake combination for me. And although it's August, I'm happy with that combination. That works for me.
You just made my mouth water.
Well, John, I was going to say, I looked at this. So we're at 96 proof on this maple cask finish, and I've been drinking this neat. I don't even. There's no burn to it. I haven't no desire to put an ice cube in it. So I agree with John 100% that for the proof that it is, it's very, very nice on the tongue.
And that's when we were talking about that earlier. That is our claim to fame. I mean, we are one of the most approachable ryes out there on the market, and that's part of our success. And that was based, we based this on Keith's grandfather's recipe, which had those sweeter notes, and it went in that really smooth direction. And that's why we came up with this. But it's fun that it follows through our entire lineup, whether you're drinking 4-year, 6-year, one of our finishes, up to this barrel strength, which should blow your palate apart, which is the point you're making, and it doesn't. It's mellow, it's smooth, and it's just a shocker. So that's a testament to this guy next to me.
And I would say that my experience with certainly a lot of rye whiskeys, other brands of rye whiskeys, is that oftentimes the balance, because it's a mix of corn mash and rye, and even a small amount of corn mash ends up dominating the flavor profile. So although you get that really nice spice of the rye, what ends up happening is the cloying sweetness of that corn ends up taking over the rye notes. And so you're talking about the sweetness, and I would say the sweetness is extremely balanced. Like, it's not that overwhelming palate crushing sweetness. It's just a nice, gentle sweetness, and it just kind of rolls off the tongue. Now, granted, it is 114 proof, so I'm not knocking back dram after dram, but my palate feels fresh and ready for another drink. It doesn't feel like I have to wait 5 minutes between sips, which is really nice.
My confession is I have knocked one after another over, and if you're doing that in the same sitting session and stand up, I don't advise it.
Seth was disappointing me there. I hadn't seen him drinking as much as he usually has, but now I see.
When John said, it makes me actually want to do one right after another, I said, "Congratulations, John! You're now an alcoholic with me." So.
Now, see, you're only an alcoholic if you admit you have a problem, Seth, and I don't admit I have a problem.
It's not a problem.
So,
I'm
just a professional.
Exactly.
That's right.
You're a professional. We're just working here.
All right, Tim. So I want to dig a little bit. You mentioned 3 finishes. Are you able to talk about the third one after the Caribbean cask?
I'm going to keep that one under my lid.
Okay.
But
okay.
I will let another cat out of the bag. So we do have. Am I going to get in trouble for this? Well,
yes. Go ahead. Don't You're going to get in trouble. Say it.
You were going to get a pay raise.
Nobody's watching.
All the nice things.
Do it. You want to talk about it. You want to. Come on.
We one of our most popular releases ever, and it was our anniversary release, which was our 10-year anniversary rye, which was a 10-year anniversary of our company. I'm asked about that whiskey today by people all over the place. And we are going to come out with our 10-year, which will be even more interesting than our last release. I won't give it all away, but we have a 10-year coming out, and it'll probably be in January. Nice. And the good news is we will have that in a very limited quantity every year going forward. So I talked about our big rye reserve,
right?
The power in that, and this is one of the strengths is now we can do that. And we'll also be holding some back for probably some older releases also.
Nice.
Cool.
Yep.
So, Keith, when your dad was making whiskey and stuff, do you got the old bathtubs and stuff that they used to put the mash in? It's like,
they got the name Good Stuff because they were perfectionists. The first experience I had working with my grandfather, he said, this is the way you do it. You don't drop it, no steal. A lot of people know that, but you want to dump this thing periodically, regularly, not, we're moving around here, but he says, you want to make sure you don't have your still burp, because if it burps, you lose it all. And they were very fussy about how they made their whiskey back then. And, you guys all probably know this, but it's very tedious. It's a slow process when you take a 30-gallon drum and you start distilling, and what I'm going to say, some guys don't pay attention to what they're doing. They fall asleep, and that's when you're really in trouble, because you got to keep your coils cool. You don't keep your coils cool, you all know what happens to the still. And that helped. And back then it happened quite often. Mm-hmm. And then they'd take these people to the hospital. They got the story about the guy that blew the still up. They take him to the hospital. They had to cover it up with the doctors of what actually happened to this guy.
That's right.
Most of the time the doctors knew he wasn't tending to his business with his still.
It was a radiator cap that blew off, man. The truck was overheating.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Boy, that radiator smell. Well, I guess they used alcohol back then, so that covered up.
And in our museum, we have one of Keith's grandfather's actual original stills on display too, which is really cool to see.
That's cool.
Actually,
now,
please.
wow. Please tell me that you have had the foresight to hold back bottles because we hear so often from companies that they don't think to hold back bottles, and then 5 or 10 years goes by and they go, "Gosh, I really wish I had a bottle of the original, the original batch or the second batch." So hopefully you guys have been doing that along the way.
Jeff was talking about, I was thinking of when Jeff was talking about that maple finish. I have 6 cases of that sitting in my basement.
There you go. Good idea.
And Tim picked it up for me. And there's other stuff, yeah. But the first bottle that was produced is on display over here at the museum. And when we started the company and we had our first production and we got it bottled, I asked my partner, I said, "Are you interested in these first bottles?" He goes, "No, not really." Well, being an auctioneer, I've always been interested in antiques and stuff, and I know how things value over time. And so I took the first four cases to our liquor store, where my hometown is Manning, which is 7 miles from Templeton. And we had to go, everything had to go to the state. Iowa's a control state, it has to come back out. And they gave us the first 4 cases. I bought the first 4 cases. I bought the first case, and my dad bought the second case. And then at Christmas that year, I set the case down on the living room floor where we were having our festivities. And I grabbed bottle number 1 and I gave it to my dad. And I said, "Dad, this is yours till I pass. I want to, that's mine." My oldest brother, Marty, I says, "There's 5 other bottles in the box, pick one out." And they couldn't see that we had them all numbered. I guess I didn't tell you that. We had usually, when we first started, we numbered every bottle. And we had a numbered every batch. And my brother, I think he picked out number 5, but the first 6 bottles are in my family.
That's
That
awesome.
means you'll never see any, John.
You might have to come to my funeral
never doubt
to get a
John's
taste of it.
ability.
How's that?
Never
Well,
doubt
that
John's
was
ability.
close.
You're going to say that, and then one day you're going to walk in and John's going to be in the living room, a family member.
I'll tell you,
drinking out a bottle 3, and you're going to be like, "How the heck did John get here?"
Canadians
And
can
it's gonna
sure
be
be
gone.
friendly when there's
Oh, yeah.
alcohol involved. I'll
John
tell
will
you what.
show up.
I don't
he'll
hear
be
well.
like,
I wish I could hear what you guys are saying.
So Keith, now that you're in the liquor business, so when you go to auctioneers, everybody always ask you for like a bottle of whiskey all the time, or?
Well, yeah, but see, that's a small token to pay for a land auction. If you can make, if you can make 10,000 on a land auction or whatever, that bottle's pretty reasonable. Yeah, it's brought up at times.
You should do a tasting before all of your auctions, like
Oh,
just a 2-hour
no,
tasting.
we do that before benefit
A
auctions.
2-hour tasting before the auction, and then just see how high it gets.
Well, years ago, farm auctions were held out on the farm. The guys retired and they'd have to sell the livestock and the horses.
Yeah.
And I was in on just the tail end of that, as far as livestock. And, they had the lunch wagons out there. Lunch wagon was a local JC's. They would have a food wagon, and then they sold Texas tea. Well, what was Texas tea? Coffee and whiskey. And those cold days in the winter when you had those farm auctions, that came in pretty handy. But they never advertised that. It was always kind of underground again.
Well, cold, warm. I mean, Texas tea is always appropriate. So it doesn't matter about the weather, man. Whiskey's always there.
I gotta tell you, I was in Florida in your area, Jeff, just a week ago, and I was still drinking Templeton, and it was on the beach. So I'm just gonna say, warm weather works.
Listen, I'm glad you braved it being a tourist coming down here, man. We need to anybody listening, Florida, come down, visit us, man. We miss everybody. So it's good to see that somebody came down for vacation. But Keith, when you said that Iowa is a control state. Did you have a challenge getting them to pick up Templeton, or were they receptive because it's an Iowa-made product?
It's interesting because of our history. They wanted us.
Excellent.
They wanted us, but they don't have to take everybody's whiskey. You know that. And if you get delisted, then that's not a good thing because they don't ever offer to bring you back in either. But no, they knew with our history. I'll just tell you this. This is how crazy this was. We didn't know all the regulations and stuff. And I talked to our distributor and I said, how many cases should we take down to Des Moines when we launched this product? And he told me, Keith, I think I'd bring down 25 cases. And I thought, we're broke. We had 400 cases sitting there. And I thought, if we're going to take 25 down at a time, we might as well lock up shop. Well, my dad and I, we loaded up a pallet of it in my back end of my pickup. And you're supposed to be certified carrier and all that stuff. We hauled it down to Ankeny, backed up to the dock. They weren't hesitant at all. They were waiting for that whiskey. And the interesting thing about us taking those 100 cases down there, that whiskey was gone in 2 days. People recognized the name. And that's where we really got to thank, my grandfather and all the previous people in this community that built this brand, because it was their word of mouth that made Templeton Rye what it is. We just brought it to the legal level. But, and you mentioned earlier the field wasn't very crowded back then when we started. And the gentleman that told me to bring 25 cases came back to the distillery one day, and his name was Harry. I said, Harry, you kind of missed this one, didn't you? Because it was going gangbusters. And he says, I don't need your crap, Keith. I want to tell you something. 2 years before you introduced Templeton Rye, we brought in a rye whiskey to the state. I'm not going to tell you whose rye it was, but he says, we brought in 25 cases. And at the end of the year, there's still 12 of them sitting there. They only sold 13 cases that whole year. Well, then Templeton came on the market. And like you said, then everybody wanted to follow us. And I don't know how many ryes are in the market now, probably 70. But I think when we started, there were around 7.
And this was just in Iowa, though. I mean, you said you were in Des Moines when you did this?
Yeah, well, Des Moines, it was, the state of Iowa.
Yeah. I mean, that's just fantastic, though. I mean, it goes to show, there's something about, all those, I don't know if it's Iowans or I don't know what the correct terminology is, but it's the loyalty to the state, which is fantastic. And that's what you need. That's supporting local business and your community and your state. That's great. Well,
and we were well recognized. We'd go down the interstate with that trailer and they'd see Templeton Rye and people were honking like crazy. And then, the ABD, Alcohol Beverage Division in Iowa, they had their own panel trucks that they went out and delivered whiskey with. And they had murals on the side. So everybody knew those trucks had liquor in them. And there were times they stopped in Manning and the guy got out of the truck and he says, until you people disperse, I'm not opening this truck. And interesting, so I got to tell you this since we're on this.
It's like Mad Max
Jody
in Iowa with the Templeton Rye. I'm loving this.
She'd probably love it if she'd hear it. Jody Christensen called me one day. She worked for the ABD. And she said, Keith, I got to tell you a story. I said, what's your story? Well, we had one of our delivery trucks in Des Moines, and a car was following it all the way to Indianola, which is about 30 miles south. And the guy, that's kind of strange. So he pulled out of Indianola and he heading down to Ottumwa, and that car kept following. Finally, he pulled over to the side of the road, and that guy come up to that driver, or the driver went back to that car and he says, can I help you with something? I noticed you've been following me. He goes, do you have any Templeton Rye on that truck? And Jody told me, she goes, can you believe he said yes? The guy followed him all the way to Ottumwa, to make that
2
drop.
hours away.
Yeah, to make that drop and get his Templeton Rye out of that venue. We had a list of 300 people wanting Templeton Rye in a lot of the high V's here in Iowa.
Wow.
It was nuts, We were the Beanie Baby. We were the Tickle Me Elmo of
Beanie Baby
of the years ago.
Mm.
So, quick question, Seth. You're in a state control, right? Where it's the state.
Am I in a state of control? I'm never in a state of control, man.
You're in a control state, right?
Yeah, we have the ABC stores. Yeah.
So do they? Have you ever seen Templeton in those?
We got them.
Awesome.
Yeah, they're all over.
Yeah, sometimes the alcohol, the state controlled ones, they're slow.
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible.
Yeah.
The state controlled things. It's awful.
Seth, I got to ask. I remember we used to vacation in that area, and bars
used
could
to
only
vacation?
carry the small 50 mLs. Is that still the case?
What,
When you buy a cocktail,
wait, what's this?
the small airplane bottles.
That's
of
blasphemy.
booze?
Never a small bottle.
Okay.
No, yeah, no.
Are you in South Carolina or North Carolina?
No, I'm in North Carolina. No, we have. This is a small bottle.
No, I'm talking the really small bottle, right? I like where you're coming from, Seth.
Oh, okay, I'm
Like-
sorry. You're talking to the wrong guy here right now in terms of those things. No, I don't know. I don't know if we have like the little airplane bottles.
No, Seth, you're missing what he's saying. In some states, the bar can't have the big bottles.
Oh.
And they pour you the drink. You buy the drink and it's a mini.
That's a nightmare.
Yeah, exactly.
Jeff, you're freaking me out. Don't even talk about this. I'm not going to that state. I need to list of those states so I'm not visiting it. Because I know there's some people that want to go to 50 states, but I ain't going to that state.
Tim might know, but I know that's true. There are some states that's how you have to buy a drink in the bar.
The first time I ever saw that was in Myrtle Beach, so that's why I can say that.
Well, it's South Carolina for you. So
you know what?
I got to ask you, did you feel the earthquake the other day?
Actually, well, it was going on, and just to show how aware I was at the time, I think I was actually, I don't know where I was probably listening to like a Pink Floyd album. I thought my kids were just running around, so I told them to calm down. And then like I get an alert like, oh, there was an earthquake, and I had to tell my kids like, oh, it wasn't you, it was an earthquake. So
they made a big deal of that on the news up here.
I'm not surprised. If we get a snowflake in North Carolina, you think a zombie apocalypse is about to happen. So I mean, it's just, we're Southerners, man. We make a big deal about anything. No, but they pour it from the bottle. They pour it from the bottle here in North Carolina.
I'm glad you've gotten up to modern times. That's refreshing.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about modern times, but we're working our way up there.
So, Tim, can you tell us about the Bootlegger Society?
So our Bootlegger Society, if you sign up for it, which you can just go to templetonrye.com and sign up for the Bootlegger Society. We just keep everybody informed about new releases, things going on with Templeton. It's just, if you want to know what's happening, what's coming next, you join Bootlegger Society, you will know that.
Totally free, guys.
And it's free. Yeah, just sign it up. We do not bombard you with endless emails or anything like that. It's just an information source for our best customers. So
a few years back, when we'd go into markets, we'd find out who the bootleggers were in a certain area, and we'd camera and we'd send out what do you call it?
it's like a mailer.
Well, no, it was just email, yeah. And then hey, we're going to meet at this certain venue and come and have drinks with us. And nice. We had a lot of success with that. So you want to be a bootlegger.
All right.
So Keith, do you know how they used to, how did they used to transport that stuff back in the old days when they were bootlegging? What was you hear the things about how NASCAR started and the, guys were running in the back of their trunks and going fast down the dirt roads. What was the method in Iowa to get it over to Chicago and things like that?
My dad always talked about this gentleman. He always got away from the revenue agents, and they were really after him, and they were after him because the V8 engine, and he had one, and he could outrun a lot of they can't outrun radios now, but they could outrun those cops back then, and they were real creative. I got a friend, there was always a hearse in town that kind of was hidden in the weeds during the day, but at night they aired up the tires and they took that thing to Chicago. And it was actually the Cohorse family. He was the undertaker here in town. And anyway, honest to God, I had a classmate, and his name, I'll tell the story, Lynn Stein, good classmate of mine. His dad went to Chicago to go to mortuary school. And he got there, and he was there for like a week or so. And the evening they said, hey, you got to help with this body. And that hearse pulled into wherever it was, the garage. And they pulled that casket out, and it was full of Templeton Rye. And he said, He says, my dad said, I don't want anything to do with the mafia. And he dropped out of mortuary school. And
Wow.
yeah, he ended up being a barber. But, you know, just crazy stuff. And
That's
they always
awesome.
beefed up the suspension of the car. You didn't want to be going down the road with your, they knew you had something in there.
No, we got a fat guy in the back. There's nothing in there. He was just big.
Well, I'm talking other vehicles too, you know. You went down the road with your, like it was jacked up like they did when I was running around. Well, that was just classic, you know. Back then, you know, you had to get something in there or they knew damn well he was a bootlegger, you know. It's crazy stuff.
We have one really cool thing in our museum. We have a propeller on the wall, and it's one of my favorite things to talk about. There's a guy named Weed Hawker, and he made a lot of the stills here in town for people back during Prohibition.
He was the blacksmith.
He was the blacksmith, and he was clever enough to build his own airplane with the intent that he would put whiskey in the back of it and fly it so he wouldn't have to drive in a vehicle. And he actually built the airplane and it flew. He did not account for the weight that the whiskey would, that the whiskey counterbalanced. He never ended up bootlegging with it, but he built the airplane with the compartment for that. I just thought that was really a cool story.
He should have started with a crop duster.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that when you look at like bootlegging throughout like United States and you look at the ingenuity through every area. And then you look at like Virginia and like North Carolina and South Carolina with our moonshine in Georgia. And there was no ingenuity. They're like, you know what, to hell with it. We're just going to race in our own cars. We're going to jack them up and we're going to work to get there. And what happens along the way. Everybody else was thinking up with these solutions. Southerners were just like, no, we're going to figure this out. We're going to get arrested if we do.
Well, you know, it still went on after Prohibition was over in this community. You know, one of the stories that really sticks in my mind is the story my dad told. There were the Kerkhoffs farmed one side of the farm that this landowner had, and the Ike family did the other. Well, this Lester Ike was going to get married, and my dad was about 12 years old or so at the time. And my grandfather was over there, and they helped. I talked about neighborhood help. Hey, we got to clean this house up. We got to clean this yard up. And so anyway, they were doing that. Well, my grandfather strolls on down to the chicken barn there to just see what was in that chicken barn. And he opened the door up, and there's a federal agent standing in there with a gun. And he goes, "Are you Nick Huffman?" And my grandfather said, "No, I'm Alphonse Kerkhoff." And my grandfather and Nick Huffman were good friends. And he goes, "We know there's whiskey in here, and we know it's Nick Huffman's," and they were waiting for him to pick it up. And they told my grandfather, you are sworn to secrecy here. If you tell Nick Huffman that we are around, you will get it for aiding and abetting. And my grandfather couldn't tell Nick, or he would have been in trouble. But that evening or so, Nick Huffman backed up to that door and they got him because he was the one that had the V8 engine and always got away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing, my dad, I told he was awful young, like 12 years old or so. And they went to investigate down to that place the next couple of days after the feds left. And my dad said, I'll never forget, they had a federal agent in the granary, two of them in the granary and one in that chicken house waiting for him to come pick up that whiskey. And my dad said, what I remember most about it is they had to be there so long, they were defecating on the other side of a buggy tongue, a wagon in another machine shed, and can you imagine sitting out there all night waiting for somebody? I mean, they had to be out there several days.
Right.
It's price to pay. It's price they pay.
They wanted him and they got him.
You can see why they still wanted to bootleg though. I mean, it's just it's the entertainment, it's the rush, the aspect. Like it's legal now. Yeah, but we still got to find some way just to have some fun with this. I mean, that just brings the joy to it because it tastes better.
Well, but I think what people have to understand though, the penalty for getting caught with a still nowadays, they just take the volume that still would produce They get to get times 24 hours times 7 days a week, and that's what your fine. That's what they figure you're running that thing continuous, and that's what your fine will be.
Right.
And
listen, I do a lot of habitat. I do a lot of Habitat for Humanity in Western North Carolina, and it's up in the Appalachia area, and there's a lot of people who have stills up there, and they make all their own White Lightning corn liquor. And I was doing some work on this people's house, and he gave us a bunch of corn, and then I was like, oh, thanks, great. So I brought it back to camp, and this is non-denominational, like Christian Habitat camp, and we ate the corn, and the corn didn't taste that great. And then the next day we go back down there, and he's like, how's the corn? I was like, well, we ate it last night. And he says, well, that's not eating corn, that's drinking corn. And we're like, oh, my bad. He's like, come on, man. So then I was like, where are we going? And I had kids, and we're working on this guy's sister's house, and he brings me to the still up in his wood in the woods, like up higher up. And he's like, taste some of this. I'm like, oh, all right, here we go. This is what we're talking about. So that was my breaking of the Christian camp right there.
I tell you what, up here in Iowa, you have some of them old timers that tell you that there's a lot of bad batches.
Oh, I've seen it. I've seen people who've gone blind because of it.
Yeah. But you know what they called that bad batch? They called that tear-ass whiskey. And they go, what was that? And they go, just what I told you, tear-ass whiskey. But you'll get a kick out of this. This is actually happened within the last 5 years. But we had a gentleman over here, and I'm not definitely going to mention his name, but he's still alive. But he was cooking whiskey, and the guy had a little bit of a accident and so forth. But anyway, he wasn't quite all there, but he was making good whiskey. And anyway, one of his buddies comes along and says, can I have some? Well, he'd give him a sample. He goes, man, he says, I got a guy in Arkansas that would love to have this. And he says, you have a sample you can send down that I can send down to him? He sent it down to that guy in Arkansas. And the guy says, I'll take all you got. So they went and they took one of these pickup truck, gas is a new one. They filled it with whiskey. And they took it down to Arkansas. They pumped it all off. And the guy said, boy, it is what you said it is. Paid him cash. He comes back to Iowa and he's buying stuff with this cash he got. He goes to the local Walmart store and he gives them $100 bill, and it passed the watermark. It was counterfeited that well. It passed.
Wow.
Come back. He passed like 8 more of those bills. They were looking for him. Finally, they arrested him.
Jeez.
But he could have got it for bootlegging, and he could have got it for counterfeiting. And the guy that tipped him off in this meanwhile died. And and he said, I don't know who this guy was. And he didn't know who the contact person was either. But you talk about a strange story. But they let him go. They let him go because he had an accident and he wasn't quite all registered.
Right.
Yeah.
Keith, as Templeton has sort of expanded to other states, because obviously people in Iowa are going to be pretty familiar with the history and the brand. Has that expanded, like the history of that brand, the sort of story of that brand? Does that carry it over to like Nebraska, Missouri, Kansas, Illinois, like neighboring states?
Yeah, we have a lot of visitors that come from out of state here. In fact, we're distributed in all 50 states. Nice. And we're in 29 countries, I think, right?
30
now. 30 countries now. We're in all the provinces, but one in Canada. And then, it's our international market could be huge.
I'm guessing Quebec is the outlier province in Canada, because that's usually the one that's tough to get into.
Which one?
Quebec. I don't know that to be a fact, but
I know
right.
the details and I can't share them with you, but it's unfortunate.
They're bootlegging there.
Yeah.
It's a new opportunity, right, Jeff?
It's a bunch of French Canadians. They couldn't get that together.
Well, it's kind of funny you say that, Jeff, but we're kind of talking earlier about state controlled versus private, and in Alberta, I think one of the reasons why we have so many liquor stores is that gosh, almost 20 years ago now. We went from a state-controlled, province-controlled system to privatized, and we're one of the few provinces that has that. And of course, the moment you go that anyone can open a liquor store, well, of course, now you have just an explosion of liquor stores. And I think, Ontario being a much larger province population-wise, they are still state-controlled. So the funny thing is, you still kind of see a lot of, hey, I can't get my hands on this, or it's too expensive. Can you just ship me up a bottle from Western Canada to Eastern Canada? So it's funny, here we are in 2020, and there's still that aspect of, boy, if you could bring a bottle with you or ship me a bottle, I'd really appreciate it. So it's kind of funny. We're not 70 years removed from Prohibition in the States, but there's still a little bit of that going on, even here up in Canada.
So I don't feel as bad now because how bad they treat cigars up there in Ontario.
But you guys were talking about bootleg whiskey. There are a lot of phonies out there though too. They're blenders, and you know what I'm talking about. They just buy Everclear and they buy this brand and that cheap brand, throw some sugar with it and call it Templeton Rye. And the problem is the guys that, if they would get caught doing that, their penalty is going to be less than the guy that was actually bootlegging it, because those gentlemen paid the tax when they bought that whiskey.
Yeah.
And your bootlegger's not doing that.
No. So on that bottle of 4-year that's behind you, Keith, is that you on the bottle?
Was I in to visit you?
How did you see that?
Yeah, I was going to say, how can you see?
I'm very impressed.
Jeff clued me in.
Jeff clued you in. All right.
Well, I tell you what, if you guys got a minute, I'll show you. It's on my phone.
Absolutely.
Our original label came off the internet.
We're talking about the 4-year, not the 6-year, right?
Right.
Right.
Six
we
years
were
got
on
Templeton
6
on it, right?
One time too, but I'll find it here. Can you guys see that? How close do I have to get?
Pretty close.
All the way.
Really
close.
close. Yeah.
Up a little
Okay.
bit.
There you
Up a
go.
There we
little
go.
bit. There we
Oh,
go.
wow.
Okay,
That's good.
this-
There we go.
This one we got off the internet, and we used it for a couple of years. We didn't know we couldn't source who these people were. I'm gonna slide it over. We went down Des Moines and we mocked up our own. That's myself as a bartender. Scott Bush is directly across from it. This is our own core group. And then Kilmer and Kevin Borsman, this Jason Wallsmith. If you look at these two guys, they resemble each other.
Right.
Jason, what happened? Oh, Jason, when we did this, I told Scott, my partner, I said, you're going to release to me, I'm going to release to you, and all these guys are going to release to both of us, because I'm not going to be in business 6 months and somebody quits and they want to be off the label.
Right.
Lo and behold, Jason left the company. He called me a couple months later and he said, Keith, I'm not with the company anymore. I noticed I'm still on the label. Well, he was looking for compensation.
Mhm.
I said, Jason, I still have your signature.
Right.
The end of the conversation. He was proud to be on the label. Well, it turned out, if you go fast forward and you look at our bottle now, Jason's gone.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. He passed out.
I'm gonna put this down. So anyway, I get a call from Jason and he goes, Keith, he says, I noticed I'm not on the label anymore. And I says, isn't that what you wanted? And he said, well, I got some friends that drink a lot of Templeton Rye. If I'm not back on the label, they're not gonna drink. And I thought, well, you gotta decide what you want.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Cut
He
the
had
mustard.
friends that had who drank a lot of Templeton Rye, and then he told you that he's not on the label, so they may not drink anymore. Man,
Well, that's kind of what he was.
I would have told him to kick sand.
Yeah, I call bullshit on that one.
Go kick
I would have
some
been like,
pounds.
"Hey, let me know about let me know who your friends are, and then you give them a call back. All right, who do you want?
Well, I can tell you, Jason was proud to be on the label because he's a musician. He's lead singer in a band. And I walked into one of his venues one night, and he recognized, or he caught me in his eye, and he says, "Folks, a lot of you know I'm on the bottle of Templeton Rye label, And he says, another gentleman that's on that bottle just walked in the door. So you knew he was proud to be on there. But he was looking for a little compensation to get off. And that's why we had that signature.
And you did a really good job of recreating that photo. I think it was nicely done.
Well,
I mean,
Could've
listen, if
found
you're
better
looking
looking
for
people, maybe.
if you're looking for anyone to stand and drink rye whiskey in a photo, I think all of us would be willing to.
Yeah, for free.
However,
Are you
however
proposing
many,
a- are you
listen,
pro-
however
proposing a
many
new label?
takes you need me to do it, however long, that's fine.
I'll tell you what, though, we've had some fun with that label because we had what we call a label shoot party down in Des Moines. And we had the props, we had all the shirts and stuff and the hats. And we told them, you get yourself and 4 other people, we'll take your picture. And we released them, but we always thought we could use those photos. And I still think we should have done it. It's too late now. But people would have loved to have had their, I thought it would be a good marketing campaign. You have 5,000 bottles of Jeff on a label with his crew, and people would collect those bottles.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
It never happened.
Well, see, now all you're going to do is plant some ideas in Jeff's head, and you know Jeff is a consummate businessman, so he's already thinking, boy, you know, that's not a terrible idea for a limited run of Templeton Rye brought to you exclusively to Corona Cigar Company.
You know, every label has to be approved by, was it the TTB folks?
TTB.
Right.
Yeah.
TTB?
Well,
So
but-
unfortunately, if we did that, you know, you said earlier, Keith mentioned, you know, I didn't know all the regulations on alcohol. I'm still trying to figure out the regulations on cigars. So I don't know if we might be able to pull it off, but I'm sure we'll probably get in trouble too.
Yeah, but Jeff, to counter what you said, supposedly when we got label approval with our label, it was in there, and I was just told this, but I never read it, but we could change the people in the label without having to get label approval on every one.
Oh, nice.
Well, that's good.
Well, I mean, that would have been more of a reason to do it, but it just, they were talking about costs of labels and stuff, and I thought, man, we were hand labeling everything anyway, but why not do it? But
Well, here's an idea. When you guys get around to doing a single barrel program, when we do a single barrel of Templeton Rye, then we could do that label like that.
Well, Jeff, I was going to offer you a single barrel. So
Look
in
at that.
2021,
Boom.
in the new year,
Done.
you'll be the first guy to get one in Florida. So I wanted to do that as a treat for being such a good customer and being good to us. Now, will it have your face on it? We'll have to talk about that offline. But you are better looking than Keith, so I'll give you that.
Jeff, I'll say this.
Jeff's got a good face for that bottle. I'm just telling you right
We want
now.
to sell this whiskey, not give it away.
I'm with you, Keith. That's what we're here for. I'm with you 100%. But thank you for that. We'd
Sure.
be honored to do the a Templeton Rye single barrel, and the stuff's a hit as it is. So we'll be super glad to pick out a nice barrel that pairs perfectly with cigars. That's what we do.
Man,
You
now
got
that
it.
You'll make that decision. We'll give you the samples.
we got business
got
out
it.
of the way, let's drink.
Yep. So on the 6 year, I'm assuming that's the city of Templeton. Is that correct?
Or is
And
it
what's the
Yeah, it is.
village? The
Yep,
village? Or
Yep.
is
Yeah, it looks
town?
like a village, but it's the real town.
Hamlet?
What's the date of that?
yeah? What's the year around that where that photo was taken?
I would guess
It's
it about,
1890s.
I'd say about 1920.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it says
It's close.
1923. I think I saw it somewhere.
Is that
But see
church?
that?
Is the church
know
still in
what's-
Templeton?
Is there a
That's a
church still in Templeton?
Well, is that well? I
Strong
imagine there is a
Catholic
church.
community.
Well, I was
German
going to say
Catholic
that. I was going to say that the church in the photo. I was going to ask if that church is still there with a steeple. It looked like it was either Catholic or Presbyterian of some sort.
You guys want to know something? You're talking about something that was a big controversial thing in this community. That steeple was taken down in 1974 because of it wasn't secure.
Hmm.
But they always said years ago, if you're going to buy farmland, if you can stand on the farmland and see the church steeple at Templeton, Iowa, buy it. It's good ground because we're right on the divide. The Missouri, Mississippi River are on both border of our state. Water from one side of town goes to the Missouri. This water on the other side goes to Mississippi.
I mean, that's
So-
that's rich soil up there.
It's good soil. It is.
Oh, it's great soil.
And No, that steeple is no longer on the church, but it really divided the community up when they took that down.
But the church is still up. And I'll tell you, when we take special tour groups through, I always take them into that church. It's breathtaking. I don't know if you've ever been to Europe, but in Germany and Austria, their churches, they take them really seriously, and they're really, everything's really ornate and over the top. That's exactly what that church looks like, which if you understand, this was a German Catholic community.
Yeah.
Comprised of that, it makes sense that the church ends up looking like that.
Well,
It's beautiful.
The Germans take everything seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we are where we are, man. So the steeple came down.
To get done what they did. Do you guys know about the market? You talking about cemetery market?
Nope. He's looking at more stuff up on his
Oh,
phone.
anyway, you can about imagine it. There was a priest that was buried up there in the cemetery, and they had a monument that was hollowed out, but they had panels on all sides, and you could unscrew those panels. And that Des Moines Register was here. We spent 3 hours talking about our product and Templeton Rye, and we got done. I said, Dad, take them up to the cemetery and show them that drop-off pickup point for Templeton Rye. And they were so intrigued by that, because if I saw you downtown, Jeff, you said, hey, Keith, I need a bottle. Well, you know where it's going to be. Give me $5 for that gallon. And you'd go up to the cemetery and pick it up. And that was an exchange. And we did that story, or my dad took them up to the cemetery and showed them that. And they were so intrigued by that. They scrapped the 3 hours we talked prior to that, and they profiled my dad on that story. And I could send you some photos, but
As a result of that, though, they've had to secure that, because that's headstone is still up there, but they had to secure it so people wouldn't try to pry it open, try to find old bottles of whiskey in there, thinking that they'd actually find something.
Well, somebody dropped the panel and broke it in half, and they actually welded it shut.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So you can't access
Rest
it
in
anymore.
peace.
Man, I mean, so you're in Templeton, how many high school students do you have in that town? Probably 40, 20?
How many
50?
high school students?
Yeah, how many
Well, there's no high school and there's no grade school.
and
You have
They
you
go
have
to a
another
neighboring
county.
town.
yeah,
They go
but
to a neighboring town.
they live in the
They go to
town.
Manning
Though. They live
or
in the
Carroll.
town though. They live in the town though. Right?
But I don't even know. A handful,
Listen,
10,
I'm just
10 high
10.
schoolers.
I'm just saying, if I lived in Templeton, Iowa, I'd be getting in trouble all the time. And I'd probably, my parents would probably be like, listen, you have to hire this guy to do something, because otherwise I don't know what he's going to do.
In reform school.
That's right.
You'd end up
That
making
too.
whiskey in your basement. That's what you'd end up doing.
Well, no, I wouldn't do that, because my parents would be like, listen, this is a nightmare. We're just going to ship him up here.
Carroll's
And,
only-
listen, you got to teach this guy what he's doing up here.
You got to realize, well, Carroll's 10,000 people. That's only 13 miles away. Manning's 7 miles away. That was, that's 10 minutes away.
Listen, I grew up in a town in northern New York, and when I say northern New York, I'm like on the Canadian border, and it was less than 9,000 people, and it was a college town. So once summer came and all the college students were gone, there wasn't much to do. I mean, it was cow pastures everywhere. So as a younger teenager, we got into trouble, because what else are you gonna do in the woods in the country? So you should do a youth program.
Well, you should have been out with my dad. My dad would put you a bale in hay or something.
Hey, listen, you know
There
what
you
though?
go.
I'd probably be out there working for y'all, so I'd do it.
Yeah.
Oh, you did a lot of that. Baled hay, walked beans. There's always something to do my dad was running out of jobs when he told you to clean the garage out. Otherwise, there was something to do.
So getting back to the branding for a quick second, talking about the labels, you've obviously given a lot of thought to that. Are you guys happy with sort of where the labels are for the various expressions, or do you think that's something that's going to continue to evolve as you add, obviously you're going to add a bourbon expression, like the existing label's going to change or evolve over time, do you think?
Well, I think in our releases, we're going to have a different, because, I think our barrel strength label looks a lot nicer than our original label. And the Caribbean, you can talk about that. It's got a little blue in it.
Yep.
And our the maple, you got it right there, Jeff. That maple's got a little gold in it, doesn't it?
Well, it's green on the bottom.
Yeah, and it's a nice looking, but
But to your point, John, yes, I mean, we're going to have to, we can't be called Templeton Rye and have Templeton Bourbon, right? So there are some tweaks coming up, and that'll be kind of something new in the new year that we'll unveil. But yeah, there will be some tweaks. I can only
really
tease that at this point.
The bourbon of Templeton.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I think one of the things you've obviously done with having some of the history in the distillery, or having a historical, like a lot of companies would shy away from that history, and instead you've embraced that. You've, like you said, you have the original still back in the day when it wasn't legal, and the fact that you've embraced that on some of the labeling. I think that just speaks to the brand that you recognize the history, you embrace the history, and you continue to integrate that into the labeling and the company. I think that helps with the identity, because I think a lot of people can relate to that and can appreciate that.
like I said earlier, the community was very good at supporting our museum, and we were good at helping. I said there's no high school in town. Well, high school closed like in 1959 or something. But then they had a grade school here, and the grade school closed here about 5 years ago. And the community bought it for $1 from the diocese, and they wanted to do something with it. They renovated it into a very nice community center. We have tons of weddings there now. They did a very nice job. But what I wanted to tell you is the town, Vern Underwood asked, is there something we can do for the town? And we were the lead donor in that project. We gave them $250,000. And with that, the community got together and they raised 1.2, and it came to like $6,000 per person. But you got to understand, this is a rural area. A lot of the farmers stepped up to the plate, and a lot of the local businesses and stuff, and they raised maybe 1.4 million. And they got us. You'd be impressed with that facility if you ever come out to visit us.
That's amazing. Good for
for 300 people. That's a lot of money.
Look at that. Look what 300 people can do.
Yeah.
I wanted to show you one other label thing, and this is going to tick you off because you can only buy it at the distillery. This is my favorite label that's a nod to the town, and it's our 10-year Templeton corn, which was an experimental batch that
Field
Keith
of Dreams.
Yeah, and it's like Field of Dreams, right?
Oh man, I'm in.
Here's the
Aaron's
thing.
in there for baseball.
So here's the deal. Those two guys are two Templeton. This is a real photograph. And one of the fellas, he's 95. Still
Dan Lechtenberg.
Yeah, still alive today.
He's probably still throwing that back too.
On the label. It's just a beautiful one. To add to it, we were going to have the Field of Dreams game here. Matter of fact, was it
supposed to be this summer?
Yeah, no, actually today.
Yeah, it was Tigers and Cardinals, I think, right?
Today. And it would have been really cool. I was going to be there and in the town and do a bunch of stuff with it, but that all fell apart.
Tigers and the Cardinals were supposed to play in Templeton today.
Oh, at the Field of Dreams.
It was originally the Yankees and the.
I've heard of the Yankees.
Yeah, but now then it switched to Cardinals and the Cardinals and the White Sox.
White Sox.
But
Yeah, they were supposed to play at Field of Dreams. So.
But this other gentleman that's on here, his first name's Benny, and he went to the service.
Right, he passed away.
And he was a pilot, and he ended up getting killed.
Yes.
But this is what their uniforms looked like back then. There also was the name of the baseball team here in Templeton was the Templeton Bootleggers.
That's cool.
That's awesome.
I'd wear a jersey from there.
Seriously, I'd get I totally get a hat. I thought it was the Templeton Straight Corn Whiskeys. That's a great name too. I mean, it's a little direct, but I mean
that should be like a gang, the gang from the area.
Yeah.
No one's gonna mess with the Straight Corn Whiskeys, man. That's at the top of the list. No one mess with those guys.
So.
Yeah, but it's important for us to celebrate the town because the town is why we're here, then the people.
I mean, how many employees do you have?
Not very many. You'd be surprised.
Well, no, but it's still, I
They
mean,
usually ask how many work here, and Tim says about half.
about half. All right. So, and then 95% of them probably drink, which is appropriate. So, I mean, how many people work at where y'all at in Templeton?
29, I think we
Full
with this
time.
COVID, we have
29 full time?
4 or 5. Yeah.
And they all live in Templeton though.
Or surrounding communities. They do come from other towns that are nearby. But just like Keith was saying earlier, there are people that live within 15 minutes, in another town 15 minutes away or less.
Right.
Probably 4.
Yeah.
5. Yeah. And there's several here.
Yeah.
Carroll's a metropolis in this area. 10,000 people. So that's
Oh, yeah. But you probably have generations too, though. You probably have
part of our pool.
sons or daughters who work there, whose parents have worked there, though, right?
Well, so that label I just showed you with the baseball player,
Yeah.
his great nephew is our tour manager here.
There you go.
Yeah. See, that's what
Yeah.
I mean. That's where you guys tie into, John, when we've talked about, and Jeff, when we've talked about like these distilleries in Scotland, about how it's just kind of, it's not that it gets passed down from generation to generation, but you have families involved in this. And
Well, like I said, they're all proud to be of this community.
yeah, exactly. That's great.
Something of interest, guys. When we started, we had our first batch ready to go, and we had to get it bottled. And we need people to have to we labeled every bottle by hand. Every sticker come off, and we put it on the bottle. Some got on crooked, whatever. But the point I was going to make is they didn't have a newspaper in town. So what we did, we put a notice in the church bulletin.
There you
And
go.
There you go.
that's how we procured those people.
Yeah.
They came to work. I knew all of them. And I told them the first day, I said, well, we know you're churchgoers because you got the word. And secondly, you're honest and you won't steal from us because you're religious. And we had a lot of fun.
Listen, it's the best way listen, you put it in that little out of the church, people go to church and then they see, man, I can go work with whiskey. This sounds, you sure you guys aren't Episcopalians like me, man? That's kind of how we roll. So, I mean,
Well, Seth, the sad part is we always, for our museum, we wanted a copy of that bulletin, but nobody kept one.
Oh man.
That'd been precious if we could have
Yeah.
had that copy where they could read, hey, interested in a job? Go to Templeton Rye.
Yeah.
love it.
All right, John or June, you have any other questions for these guys?
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about the new distillates that you guys are doing, especially? So, if I read right, you're probably looking to release the first batch in 2022, right?
2022,
When
yeah.
it's 4 years old. I'm not sure if you could disclose like mash bill and that kind of thing, but what are you guys? You're certainly barreled and aging right now, but can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Sure.
I'll say this, guys. We had our product outsourced for many years, and we made that company a lot of money. One of the favors we wanted some new make from that company, and they were good enough to provide it with it. And that was a barometer for us when we got this still going. I'll say this, it's phenomenal product that's coming out of our still.
Nice.
And
So our mash bill is the same. It's going to be a 95.5 mash bill for our rye product. We don't plan on changing that at the moment for our core products. Down the road, will we do some other fun mash bills and mess around with it? Probably. I certainly hope so. But we will stick with 95.5 as a mash bill. But I will tell you, and I'm with Keith, we love that MGP product that we've had. It's been an award-winning, wonderful product for us. We've loved it. But when you taste our Iowa samples next to the same age samples from Indiana, we like it even better.
Yeah.
We
No,
think it's
I'm looking
ahead
forward
of
to
that.
it.
We think it's ahead of that product, and that's not to knock the other stuff, but we
I just
were
hope those guys aren't watching.
yeah. Well,
So you guys are better than Indiana right now.
we're not even saying we're not saying that, but we're just
That's
what I heard.
Like
I love it.
we really do.
Yeah. So
Well, I
So
mean,
this-
part of the fun is that, you know, now that you can dial in that control yourself. I mean, obviously the sky's the limit, and you can almost drive yourself crazy in terms of, you know, the different levers and dials you can pull for the spirit that you're pulling yourself. And, you know, that's part of the fun. You know, it's chemistry, sure, but there's a lot of not science. It's a lot of heart that goes into that. So that's got to be really exciting for you to be looking down the road and seeing that coming out.
It is. I mean, we're excited. We're thrilled with what we're making. We really are. And we have a good team behind us. We've got guys that have been distilling for a long time, that have even the guys on the lower level of the distilling part of the process have been making it or have had that in their family, just like Keith, for forever. So they're so familiar with the process. So when you talk about heart, there is a lot of heart out there, and a lot of good experience too. Even our lab technician, I'm blown away by that guy. He's as nerdy as they come, but man, he helps make some really, really
I hope
good
he's not
product.
watching.
I'm pretty sure he knows. He's fantastic, though. I mean,
They appreciate the nerdiness that's
You know, when you put out
recognized
your
by others.
when you put out your bourbon, you need to put like, we're not from Kentucky and we're proud of it. Something just
And then at the
bold.
bottom, a steak
Something just really bold that you're gonna be like, man, it's gonna make some waves, and that's gonna be epic.
Yeah.
What
I mean,
the heck?
I
How do you
love.
marketing.
Yeah.
It sounds like a future street
I'm
fight.
I'm too much of a drunk to put me in that department.
You're moving to Templeton.
Dude, I'd move to. I'd love it, man. I would love it up there.
It's pretty.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. It really is.
I mean,
Pretty exciting.
I love MGP. How can you say you don't love MGP? There's so much of
And
it.
that's not what I'm saying. So no. We
Yeah.
do too. We do too. I mean, I very much. They do a lot of things really right. We would have never partnered with them had we not loved what they do. And
But I also, you know,
Send it to
within such
June.
the-
Don't back down on June.
No, and then
They're the
within
best in the
the
world till Templeton Rye built a distillery.
that's right.
yeah, well, I mean, but I also think it's great that, you know, with such the crazy bourbon boom, that there's so many craft, you know, new distilleries out there, right? That's outside of your big guys, and they're doing awesome things. They're, you know, a lot of this is in a way like farm to table, where they source, you know, their own grains. You know, they learn from everybody in the industry, and have their own product, right? Like guys like Woodinville and Wilderness Trail and etc. I think they're making they're younger products, but I think they're fantastic right now, and they could only get better, right?
So absolutely. And you'll find with those smaller guys, there are a lot of hit and misses with them, you know, but there are a lot of hits in there, and you're right, absolutely right on the money.
Well, Jim Murray said it. He goes, "There's a lot of small distilleries out there that are doing a better job than the big ones."
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
I'll
just
tell you one flaw on those smaller guys, sorry to interrupt, John, is I noticed them releasing greener product because they need to make
Yep.
that money quick.
They gotta
And
churn, yeah.
that's the only flaw I can really kind of throw out there. Be careful with the really new ones. But like you're saying, they all tend to come up to speed at some point.
Yeah, but it's great that you guys could hold, you know, your distillates and your aging until you guys feel like you can, right? Because you guys have all this great backing from being in the industry for so many years. So
I wish I could share. I had some barrel images I wanted to show you because it shows you the strength and the power of what we have, that how much Iowa product. First of all, we have thousands and thousands of barrels of Iowa product. And then we have all that MGP of various ages. It's going to allow us to innovate and to create endlessly, right? For a very, very long time. It's really powerful. Some people look at it and go, see that as a negative, and there's no negative in it. It's a great product, and it's going to allow us to do some exciting things, and not only in the near future, but a ways out too.
yeah,
Any
cool.
critique that comes from June and I, you don't need to listen to, and this is why I'm going to tell you. June is sitting in a garage with a fake ficus tree behind him, and behind me is a DOT road close sign covered in Christmas tree lights. If you take advice from us, you're in trouble. You've hit rock bottom.
Seth, man, they just offered you the head of marketing at Templeton Rye. I don't understand where this is coming
It was
from.
the Christmas lights. It was the Christmas.
Tim, just quickly getting back to maybe for some of the sort of nerdier people out there, what is your current setup for spirit stills and wash stills? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Like in what terms?
Just in terms of like how many wash stills and how many spirit stills you have, because there's a lot of guys out there that love that stuff. They like to know, how many you have and what the ratio is and that kind of thing.
I can't hear the question. Go ahead.
We just have one main. You're bringing up a sticking point that I'm actually having with greater ownership, and Keith and I have talked about it. I would like to have some more small experimental stills on site, and we have the room and designed the space for that. So I'm pitching that as we speak. So we have one main giant column still that we use, and we're really proud of it. Once again, I wish I could show you pictures of it, and one single pot still. But our production, we just crank out giant volume. I mean, we're in 30 other countries in all 50 states in the US. So we are built for making large quantities of whiskey. And I really want us to have some small stills to mess around with. More than anything, to play around with, different types of grains, mash bills. Do we want to mess around with sorghum? Different things. You can't do that on a giant still. So that's a really direct answer to your question, I hope.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, I think this panel certainly understands this, especially June and Seth and Jeff. I think we probably more than a lot of people understand the economics of what it takes to run a distillery, and certainly the economics of it's not cutting a check for a still is not something that is quite easily done. Those are not,
Right.
You talk about being in farm country. I mean, you're literally talking the price of a tractor or more just for a single still. So that's not a small investment for a company.
I'm trying to talk, as you enter into the building, into our visitor center, which is kind of where we're sitting. We have Keith's original still, which is a perfect size small still that sits in a glass case, and it drives me out of my mind. It needs to be there because it serves its own purpose too. It's what was originally in here. So
Yeah.
But I hope the next time we talk that we have something like that back in the back room and we're messing around with it.
All right. Anything else, John or June or Seth? Jeff, anything else?
All I can say is next time I'm driving across Iowa, I'm heading to your place.
Yeah.
And hopefully, Keith, do you have a combine? I've never driven a combine. I'd love
Gosh
to.
dang, you bring up an I just bought an 18 last year, but I always tell people I got a $365,000 combine. I got a $20,000 house.
So that means yes, you got one, but will you let me drive it?
I'm not too elaborate with my house, but I like my machinery. And,
I wasn't asking about your house. I was asking about the combine. I mean,
you want to ride in the
behind wheel
combine?
of one.
Funny, people in Chicago, we've had these industry visits, where people that were working for us in Chicago or the distributor, they wanted to come out here and tour Templeton Rye. And then I said, I'll tell you what, they said, we want to ride your combine. So that fall, it was an early fall, I said, I'm going to keep 40 rows, give everybody a ride in my combine. I got one of these at Tilt, it's a side hill combine, tilts, and it would have been a great experience for them to see how we dump on the go with the grain carts and everything. Well, lo and behold, it never rained for 2 months ahead of that, but it rained 2 inches the night before they couldn't run. But it would have been an interesting experience. I still have guys texting me or calling me hey, we want to come out and ride in your combine. But it'd be a good experience. But you got to be out here, October 15th to November.
Jeff's gonna get out there. Jeff's gonna get out there. He's gonna be out there.
Yeah.
We had that windstorm. Right. Now the damn corn went down, and that's that's terrible. It's very slow. And when the corn's standing nice, man, you can really roll through the feet.
Well, you have to understand. You have to understand when Jeff got into tobacco. I mean, he really got the bug of. I mean, he is a farmer through and through now.
He is a true farmer.
He's got the true farmer spirit.
I want to ride in your tobacco harvester.
We don't have a tobacco harvester. You walk and do that. You do that by hand and put them in bins.
I'm not interested anymore.
105-degree heat.
Yeah.
I'm gonna sit in the shade and drink some Templeton Rye and smoke some FSGs.
That's right.
You guys, Come to the farm and do that. But no, our tractors are the small ones, man. You guys run the big ones. So
Sounds like we need to do a trade on
Yep.
seeing facilities.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'd love to see that.
You know, years ago, I had an auction. They had cigar presses. Do you have any cigar presses down there? You don't know what I'm talking about.
I know
They
exactly.
were
what you're talking
wooden
about, but-
molds.
Yeah.
They'd roll them cigars up.
Yeah.
And they'd put them in these molds and they took that top and they pressed them.
Mm-hmm.
You want a cigar
That's-
mold?
That's
I'll
because
tell you
there
what, this
used
is
to
an,
be.
I wish I would have bought them. I mean, they only brought like $30.
Man, we could get you a cigar. Jeff could
I've
probably
never
get,
seen them in Iowa.
we could all get you a cigar mold pretty easily.
Yep.
But you guys call them presses or molds?
Molds.
That's the wooden. That's the mold, and the mold goes in a press.
Yep.
Okay,
Believe it
so-
or not, if you had a press, you can still sell those because they use those, with the smaller factories like in Miami and Tampa. People
Okay,
look for
were
those
these
presses.
wooden,
'Cause otherwise
these
you gotta
wooden
make them, they're
molds you're
kinda
talking
expensive.
about? Were they wooden?
Yeah,
They
wooden
were
molds
wood.
go
Now they're
in
a
it,
lot of plastic now.
But,
Yes,
but
yeah. Yeah,
it
these
doesn't
were
matter. They're
authentic.
still.
I mean, they would have been cool.
No, they're still wooden molds. But what I'm getting at is the press that they go in, it's like a big clamping device, turning either the
Okay.
handle or the wheel. Those,
Like
even if they're 100 years old, people will still want them because they're big and they're heavy and they're expensive to make.
Kind of like a cider press, right? A cider,
Yeah.
Apple cider, you squeeze.
Yep.
Yeah.
juice and
that's-
stuff.
I'm in Florida, man. We squeeze oranges, so I've never seen an apple press.
Yeah. It's like, it's kind of like an
Florida.
apple press.
Yeah.
Florida's
It's kind of,
best.
it's kind of like an apple press. It's kind of
Yeah.
like an apple press.
Yeah.
You want a press or do you want molds?
Well, I want an old antique mold, But
That
you
might be a
probably
little
don't have
difficult,
those.
but
They're all made out of plastic, right?
Some
No,
of them
there's
now
wooden
are.
ones.
Yeah. What's like a carbonate, isn't it? Isn't it like a,
You can do them either way. But
Yeah.
but if I make a road trip up there, I'll bring you a mold.
Hey, that'd be
And some
great. That'd be
tobacco.
great. Yeah, it'd be a conversation piece because we don't have them around here.
Yep.
Not too much tobacco in Iowa. Wacky tobacco.
oh, we could grow it. We could grow it. We'll smoke it.
Well, there you go. It sounds like Tim and Keith need to come down for Florida sun grown, and Jeff needs to go up for some Templeton. Yeah.
Yeah.
It does.
Next time we do a
Been
barn
long.
smoker, that's where we had the flapper girls and all that stuff out there. You're
Well, it'll
welcome
be a
to
little
come.
different. Yeah.
I'll put you to work. You can get your hands all sticky and dirty, and then you can say you picked some tobacco, and you can say I'll never want to
That'd
do
be
it again.
really cool.
That would be. You guys pick it and you dry it and
Yeah,
then
you pick it up. Everything's by hand though. That's the problem. It's all done by hand, one by one, leaf by leaf.
But now they're cutting back on all this Philip Morris stuff and the lawsuits, and there's still room for tobacco growers. I get that, but they've really cut that down, haven't they?
That's different. That's cigarette tobacco. So that's burling, and you're growing what they call the bright tobacco, the yellow tobacco. So that's mechanized. But when cigar tobacco, it's all done by hand. The only places they're growing
That's
is
what makes it
Connecticut.
special.
That's what makes it
Okay.
special
Yeah.
and expensive.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they have, it's North Carolina where I am, where we have the cheap tobacco.
So Keith, let me
which
put in
pays for my
perspective. At one time, to harvest corn, they had to do it by hand, and they used to have to, crank the little handle to get the kernels off the cob, right?
Well,
Before-
no, what they did, they went through the field and they picked ear corn. They had to shuck that corn back and throw the whole ear in the wagon.
But somebody had to get it
By
off
one.
the ear at some point.
You gotta grab the ear and throw it in the wagon. And then it went into the crib, and that's where my grandfather hid his glass jugs. Well, then you had to get the sheller out and shell it. So you had
There
to
you go.
run. And then that's when you took the kernels off the cob.
All right, so imagine that's the way we still do cigar tobacco. We have to do it the old-fashioned way, everything by hand. So that's what's the difference between cigar tobacco and cigarette tobacco. So it's all still done the old way. And that's why nobody does it. Not many people do it in America anymore because it's too expensive.
Do it in the
So anyway.
Caribbean, right?
Yes, Central America and the Caribbean. So we'll give you an internship next summer. All right, I got a spot for you.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's get over this COVID crap, because it's been a few years since I've been in Florida, but I've been down there a lot. I went down to Atlanta they had a big liquor festival down there. Florida. They got one in Miami that I was at. But anyway, Ortez, I don't know if you know, yeah, you're in Tampa, right?
Tampa and Orlando.
Orlando. Yeah. See, Mark Tiberia is our but he's not local sales. He's all big corporations and stuff.
You guys, Jeff, you guys have liquor festivals in Florida?
Yeah, I was going to be down there for the Whiskey Advocate, the Big Smoke and Whiskey Fest.
I mean, I have liquor festivals in my kitchen every Saturday, so.
They could also be billed as Big Smoke.
It's like a bigger thing. There's like more than a couple
Other
people
people come over and hang out.
Once again, you're gonna have to explain these things to me. We're a little bit slower down here in the South.
So, well, guys, I gotta get going here.
Yeah, well, we want to thank you, Keith and Tim, for joining us, and Jeff always for coordinating these things.
Hey, thanks for the exposure, guys.
Absolutely.
Tim said it starting out. I wanted to say it on the end. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, we'd love to have you guys back, and especially when you bring us out some of these new expressions and things like that. I think it'll be a great show to discuss those as well. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank y'all.
All right.
Appreciate it, guys.
Yep. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we will catch you on the next one.
Okay.